Just waiting for more people to drop in. Anyway, welcome to those of you who are here.
How are you, Howie?
So far, so good. Thanks for asking.
We lived through election day.
Yes, I followed it very closely.
Much relief today. It was an exercise in damage control.
Well done.
Thank you.
We're all in this together.
Yes.
So anyway, again, welcome everyone. Glad you're here. Hopefully, if a few more people will pop in and we can unmute and say hello to each other, we'll start that way tonight, but we'll just wait another 30 seconds. Okay, anyway, hello from Sausalito. Feel free to say where you're calling in from.
Hello from Bernal Heights, San Francisco.
Hello from
Amy.
Regina, Saskatchewan in the middle of the prairies.
Hey, Jill. Glad you're with us.
Me too.
Hello from El Cerrito.
Hi, El Cerrito.
Hello from Burlingame.
Hey, David.
Oh, from Mitch and Noemi.
Hello, Noemi.
Also from San Francisco, Paul. Hi.
Hi, Paul. Glad to see you. And
Helen from Oakland. Hi,
hello,
everybody.
Helen. Good to see you.
Keith from Berkeley.
Hey, Keith. Welcome. Oh, you're Mission Dharma tonight. Thank you for co-hosting. Appreciate it very much. There's Mary. Okay, looks like we're small but mighty. A force of goodness, force of clarity, force of tenderness. Can't help but be of some benefit to our suffering planet. So I'm moving very slowly because I want to make sure as many people as possible are here for the beginning of the sitting so that we can drop in together and we can all reorient ourselves to the only reality, the only real reality, which is the life of what we call the present moment. That's the name we give it. But we want to actually move beyond that name to the direct experience. This is the language of the Dharma, is the language of direct experience. So in order to come close to that immediate and direct experience, it's important that we come out of the tangle of our thoughts about reality, even those important thoughts that we inevitably have about our relationship to the world that we live in, people who are suffering, people who are causing suffering. It's important that we think about them. And when we do, it's helpful if we wish them well. But for now, though, we want to heal ourselves from living in our thought worlds and come out of that tangle, because it can go on and on and on and on and on, and we can miss reality. So Tuesday night is an opportunity to step out of that stream of distress and just find that simplicity that lives in us, as us, using our body as our guide to the immediate present, since our body is always present. So our body is our first grounding in present time. And we mix it with the ultimate ground, which is the simple fact that we are aware. So awareness mixed with our body, without which we wouldn't be able to have this conversation. But when the two come together, we come alive. Reality is what, as Nisargadatta says, reality is what makes the present so vital, so different from past and future, which are mental. So there is a reality, there's a fragrance, there's a sense of what it's like when we're aware and embodied. Awareness has a kind of clarity and lightness, energetic quality. Our thoughts are often heavy and sticky, weighty. So we're going to lighten up a little bit tonight by just being aware, supported by our bodies and all of our senses. So feel the contact points where your rear touches the cushion, chair. The touch points of your hands, lips, eyelids. All supporting us to gather our attention here. Feeling the form and the shape of our sitting bodies. Feeling the aliveness. Vibration. And then just breathing with that experience of the whole body. A few intentional breaths can help us breathe with our bodies. Well, once your attention is more intimately in this field of sensations, you can just let your breath go. Let it be an anchor for your attention, but not direct it or control it. Just feel and enjoy your body's experience of breathing. Even though our eyes are closed, we're actually waking up, waking out of the torments of the mind into the simple reality. But the torments may arise at some point: desire, aversion, restlessness, sloth and torpor, doubt, other moods and emotions. And we use each of them as a reminder of our love of being right here and noticing. We don't do anything with our mind other than let its natural function of being conscious and noticing become stronger. No interference with the thoughts, the images, the sounds, sensations, just letting them reveal their changing nature and letting them be known. And in that process, strengthening this quality of sati or mindfulness. This bare attention with no aim other than to notice. No agenda, no problem solving. Just knowing a presently arising experience. And knowing that we're knowing. Just this moment. Just this breath or whatever is predominant. Kind attention, interested attention, relaxed attention. Welcoming attention. Again, if thoughts of the world arise, that's just thinking mind. Thoughts of the world. Sadness comes, that's just sadness. Sadness is like this. Everything is changing. If there's quietness, this is just quietness. Letting everything be as it is. when you realize that you've been absorbed in a thought world or thought bubble, that's a sign of one of mindfulness's most important functions, to know that we've been absorbed. And it's a sign that you've already come back to attention, come back to mindfulness. Once you're here, relax. And in support of remaining anchored to real time, receive, put your attention on the breath, whichever is occurring, the in-breath or the out-breath. And rest in a state of being aware as long as it lasts. A new sitting begins right now. The past has passed. Future's a dream. There's just this. This is our destination. Everything is a new beginning. If you're sinking into dullness, just know this as sloth and torpor, dullness. It's restless or agitated, just know this. This is what restlessness is like. If you're trying to make something happen and there's greed in your mind, just know this. Notice what happens to this when you notice it. Everything is equal in the field of mindful attention. Well, I imagine that for you, like me, the practice period was a bit of a truth serum. Kind of let you know the effects of your life, the effects of your thoughts, the effects of the world all becomes a little bit more obvious during a sitting. A little more physical tension, a little bit more fatigue, weariness, a lot of gratitude about stopping. Wonder how it was for you. We can take a few minutes for any comments, questions, topics that emerge from the sitting, questions about anything you noticed in the practice or anything about the instructions. Just either raise your hand or use the raised hand function and if you like, and know that your comment or question or your topic will, whatever your comments are, will be of some benefit to everyone else. So please, Amy, thanks for breaking the ice.
Sure. Thanks, Howie. I was appreciating real sweetness and just what a relief to have permission to put down the striving that is
Mm,
so ever present for me.
mm,
Um, just permission to be is just such a sweet relief.
yay.
Yeah. So I just felt like saying that out loud and thank you.
Yes. Thanks for offering that to everyone.
Thanks for this, Sangha for you.
Thank you. So if you notice, though, just for future reference, if you happen to notice that there is striving present, that's where your practice is. No, oh, this is striving, because then the striving ends instantly, because it's then just a mental state being known, which is good news.
Yeah, I mean, it manages to restart instantly too.
It managed to restart.
It manages, yes, the
It manages
striving.
to, yeah,
I wake up to it all the time and then,
yeah,
but to just stay for this, like, whatever it is, 40, 45 minutes and to sustain that, like,
right.
it's just so sweet.
Yeah, just sustained mindfulness. Yeah, instead of the to-do list.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
glad you had a little relief. Anyone else? Paul? Oh no, David, please feel free.
Yeah, this is just really sharing, but yeah, I've been listening to the podcast of Joseph Goldstein lately, and he was talking on one of these podcasts just about this very basic, Buddhist principle of impermanence, which, you kind of think you understand it, but I've been, there's a relationship in my life that I've been, really struggling with, and it's
Mm,
uh, and it's like a light went off. It's like, yeah, this relationships are impermanent. Um,
mm,
and there's sort of levels of understanding. And um, I just really kind of got it on a much deeper level than I had before, and sort of easier to accept, I guess, what's
mm,
happening. So
mm. Anyway, yeah, there's grief with impermanence. loss, but that's just grief, and that's just part of that's also impermanent. So
Yeah.
just cling to nothing. I actually have a sutra tonight that I thought that I would read that is very much in the same vein as what you were just speaking of, and I'll save it for a little bit later. We'll see where it pops in, but anyway, glad that you brought impermanence into the.
I don't seem to have a icon to put my hand up.
Oh, well, I'm glad that you're here, so please feel free.
I just wanted to thank you, Howie, and just share that, I really had mindfulness 45 minutes or 40 minutes for the first time in so long. It was just lovely
Mm,
to be present and to have it coming and going, just be here. Thank you.
great. Yeah. I think that our capacity to have more continuous mindfulness really does depend some. Of course, it's your willingness and determination and effort and all that, but it's really a big function of practicing with other people, and how we support each other, and we kind of keep each other honest in a way by doing it together. So, and we're accountable, in other words. So anyway, I'm happy that you had that experience, and I'm happy you're all here. Anyone else, please feel free. Leith, did you have your, oh no. Yes,
Sorry, I forgot to unmute.
no problem.
I just had a little bit of a different experience today than I've normally had. Like, so often you've talked about putting your mind in your body and your body in your mind. And, quite often I'll be very aware of what's going on in my mind. And somehow, I know you've talked about your mind not being in your head or your brain where we kind of sometimes think it is. But anyhow, tonight, my mind went into the physical part of my head. So I did never think about my head being part of my body. So it was just a different experience, that I was so aware of what's going on behind my eyeballs and in my ears and just my whole head. It was just a very different experience that I haven't had before. And I don't know.
That's mindfulness of the body, if I've ever heard it.
Okay. Not really, I really have a question. I just wanted to share that.
I'm glad to have your body, have the head included. It's but that is one of the jokes that people say, that my head is living a few feet from my body, and of course they're never apart, but we imagine that we have the feeling of being disconnected. So having it all included in one thing, great. Happy to hear. And the fact that you were tracking the different things that were being noticed, those are all mindfulness moments. So that you're both growing in mindfulness, growing in sensitivity. You're putting your mind in your body, and your body in your mind. It's all the wholesome effects of meditation are accruing. And it's playful. I got the sense that you were kind of playing, and which is, I think, an important part of practice, because it can get really serious. As my colleague James says, dead serious, deadening. So hope you have fun. Lisa, please feel free.
Hi, Howie. I have a question for you. So I'm working on my listening, particularly when I'm in conversation with others, being a better listener, being more mindful and present. And I just wondered if you had any words of wisdom for that. The reason I am really focused on it is I've noticed me, in a conversation, the thing I want to say before I have time to say it, like I'm ahead, I'm not really there because I'm thinking about what I want to say next. Anyways, I just wondered, like, if you had how you bring meditation to relating with others or mindfulness.
Yeah. Well, even in even in the earliest sutra of the Buddha on mindfulness, the Satipatthana, the sutra on the four foundations, the sutra includes mindfulness both internally and externally. So mindful of the other, mindful of oneself. And in fact, it's one of the instructions that's often offered. It's been since I started practicing and leading retreats, that when you speak to another person, have at least half of or even more of your attention in your body. So that part, it allows you to stay connected, and you can actually feel when you're starting to jump ahead a little bit. And when we jump ahead, we tend to get disembodied a little bit, or our winds move up. So that habit of having equal attention internally, what we call internally, or as bodily awareness, can actually both allow you to relax a little bit because the attention is more settled. And when our attention is settled, our mind clears, and then we can then more easily trust that whatever needs to be said will be said. We don't have to be worried or anticipate or jump ahead. And it all seems to, when we trust awareness or trust that sense of presence, everything that we need is there for us. But you have to practice it in order to trust that, because without that trust, we think we have to somehow perform, have to have things figured out. It has to be, so then we're measuring whether we're okay or not, and it gets bound up in identity and comparing or being acceptable or not, and all of that is a real impediment to listening and an impediment to speaking congruently. But so staying in your body, I use the 60-40 rule, 60% in the body, and sometimes even more, and 40% in my listening. And I actually listen much better when I am more settled that way. So good luck. Okay. Last call. I can't help feeling somebody. Somebody wrote a note, I can't help feeling that even though my personal life has been very difficult, that if the outer world was in better shape, I would be doing much better. I think we would all feel some relief. But life is not made according to our image. It's made according to the way it's made. So we have to live in accordance with reality. And so to the degree that we are waiting or hoping or expecting the world to be, or associating our well-being with whether the world was in better shape, that state of waiting, that state of hope, in the sense of it's a state of tension. So we have to really, as the Stoics do, just see the world as the way it is and work with our own reactions to it. And that's Dharma 101 too. It's not so much what's happening in the world, it's how we meet it. And the qualities of mindful attention, where we just see it as it is, and kindness, just inclining toward kindness, that can allow us to be well, even if we have had many difficulties, even if the world is in great distress. Moment to moment, we can plant the seeds of being well. Or we are well when we're present. Where's Debbie? Oh, glad you're here, Debbie. Thanks for the comment. So last week, you may not remember, Wait, uh-oh, how did I end up on speaker? Anyway, last week, for those who were here, I spoke about Deepa Ma, one of my teachers. And perhaps you got a little bit of the flavor of Deepa Ma and her fierceness, her determination, her simplicity, her continuity, so many elements of Deepa Ma that I guess would be a wonderful example for dealing with a world that's out of whack. You just keep practicing, you just keep showing up moment to moment. You don't overcomplicate things. So that you free your energy up so that you can help where help can be done, but also that you stay in your quieter moments, that you stay balanced and nourished by the simple experience of being present. But I thought that since I've often described or someone described me, but I think of myself as this now, that somebody described me that way. They were roasting me a little bit on my 60th birthday. There was a party given for me at Mission Dharma. That was 11 years ago. It'll be 12 years in October, but the MC described some of my practice history and the different cast of teachers that I had the good fortune of sitting with. He called me the Forrest Gump of the Dharma scene, because I just stumbled on all these teachers. And I found a quote from Anagarika Munindra that he calls this stumbling, he calls it the pretense of accident. And maybe it wasn't an accident, maybe it was just the causes and conditions that led me to the Dharma and different teachers. But when I thought of my life as Forrest Gump, I took a continued walk down memory lane, and my mind lit on one of my other teachers. And many of you who sat retreats with me and sat on Tuesday night have heard me talk about him before, but one of my very important teachers was actually Deepa Ma's teacher, who was Anagarika Munindra. And Munindra was also the teacher of Joseph Goldstein, who I consider the preeminent Western Dharma teacher, who David mentioned today. He's been listening to his podcast. But Joseph sat in India with Munindraji for about 6 years, and eventually invited Munindraji to the States. And I somehow, because of my passion for the Dharma, I ended up being a manager of a retreat that was an annual retreat. And I actually attended as a teacher, as a manager, as a student. And I probably went to this retreat for about 34 years in a row. And this was the annual retreat that we used to lead in Yucca Valley, California, Joshua Tree, at the place called the Institute of Mental Physics. And that's another story, the Institute of Mental Physics. It was started in the 1930s with this guy named Dingley May, who walked through Tibet and took teachings from these Tibetan masters. They told him to go back to the States and just call it Christianity and start a church. And he started the Church of Mental Physics. And at one point in the late 30s, early 40s, and up until the 50s, there were 400,000 members of the Church of Mental Physics. And they taught all kinds of magical Tibetan teachings and Hindu teachings, and all couched in the general teachings of the heart of Jesus. So because it's all perennial philosophy, it's all fundamental wisdom, that's perennial wisdom, that's embedded in most of the wisdom traditions. But anyway, I happened to attend this retreat, and then I became a manager of this retreat in 1980. I became the manager of, or maybe it was 80 or 81. And just imagine this retreat. There are 185 meditators for 2 periods of 2 weeks at a time for 28 days of 185 people practicing together. Quite extraordinary. And in those days, many more people did longer retreats. But one of the retreats that I managed, along with my managerial role, I became the attendant for Anagarika Munindra, who came to help lead the retreat. He was more like a visiting teacher and came in and did talks and met with people, and it was a little bit less formal than one of the teachers just giving Dharma talks. But I was his attendant, and so I followed him around through the course of this retreat and did everything with him. I took him shopping, and he was such a bright light, an incredibly bright light, energetic, enthusiastic to a fault, curious about everything. I took him shopping in Palm Springs for a boombox. And we went to the store. He looked at every single boombox and all the details of it. He had passion for everything. And that was really important for me because it broke the spell that, getting back to, who was I talking to earlier, about the seriousness, how one can get so serious. He had a certain kind of lightness and freedom. It wasn't packaged in this sense that you have to be a kind of buttoned up Buddhist. He was, on the other hand, a traditional Buddhist. And in fact, he was an anagarika, which is some halfway between a monk and a layperson. And so basically wore white, wore the same thing every day, didn't wear regular Western street clothes, lived very simply. It was a form of renunciation. But otherwise, he was just a jolly being. And any question, he was game for any question. But if you asked him any question about the Dharma, you had to be ready for a 30-minute answer. And he would just flood with beautiful, clear Dharma. But the Dharma came down to the simple power and capacity that each of us has to develop continuity of mindfulness. So Maureen, the fact that you had continuity of mindfulness, it is that you can do this, and you can do it anytime, anywhere. And his basic teaching, in fact, the title of the book that was done in his name and about him was Live Your Life Fully. And he didn't see any dividing line between a householder and a monastic, as in terms of capacity to have continuity of mindfulness. And after revisiting my memories of Munindraji and seeing that title of the book, I see where Deepama got a little bit of Munindraji's transmission of being able to use this very challenging existence in Calcutta and in Burma with a young child and a husband who has just died, and being able to continue her practice and deepen her practice right in the middle of it. And one of the trips that Munindraji made to the US, you may not be interested in this, but it captivated me. he brought along with him an assistant teacher who was a realized being in her own right. Her name was, wow, I just had a senior moment. It'll come to me. But this particular woman teacher was a householder and could not, because of her circumstances, get to the meditation center to do any kind of intensive practice. So her creative response was to use a clock and put a clock on her bed under her pillow, and she would just listen to the ticking of the clock. And of course, she would do all of her activities mindfully, but the power of concentration came with the listening to the clock, and then the power of mindfulness of changing objects came along with all the other activities that she became mindful of, and she ended up being awake in her life and had a real profound release of stress. Not easy, not in an easy situation either. Some of you may recall this, that when I took some teachings from her, the woman that came with Munindraji, she made a physical gesture and she said, "Guard your mind." And she put her hand on the heart center. And that itself broke the view that I had that the mind was here and the heart was here. And in the Dharma, the word for heart and mind is the same, citta. And in fact, there's the sense that the seat of consciousness or the seat of mind is in the heart. And it's only in the West that we've created this split and the winds have moved up and the brain becomes associated with mind, but there's no mind in the brain. Brain is like a little circuit. It's like a switchboard, but mind is everywhere. But in this case, she would put her hand on her heart and say, "Guard your mind." That was just that gesture really helped me. So I leave that with you as well. I can't believe I can't remember her name still. That compartment in my brain has many little gaps, and I just kind of have to surrender to that reality. Sometime later tonight, her name will come. Nevertheless, getting back to Munindraji, followed him around, felt the transmission of his teachings, and his phrase was simple and easy. Simple and easy. Don't complicate this. Don't become tense with your practice. Simple and easy, simple and easy. And notice when I say the word simple and easy, I begin to sense the natural capacity that I have within me to be relaxed. That's why I sometimes on Tuesday nights I'll say, stop meditating, just be mindful. Stop being a meditator, because once we're a meditator, once we're meditating, we tend to do some kind of, it ends up being too much doing. And so this simple and easy just allows us to just be aware. Simple and easy. And I think through Munindraji, Joseph Goldstein, again referring to my root teacher, Vipassana teacher, one who really ignited the flame of the Dharma for me, I think my main root teacher, he often used the expression, which I also use, where he said, settle back into the moment. And I think he actually got that from Munindra. Settle back into the moment, simple and easy. Needless to say, being with him over the many days, I developed a lot of confidence and faith in the teachings, in the practice, in him. And so I listened to what he said. I listened with a real sincerity, which I might not, which sometimes takes a while to listen, with a full openness to teachers. I can be skeptical, or I can, in a certain kind of healthy skepticism, a certain kind of great doubt to say, I'm going to figure this out for myself, or see for myself. And that's the Dharma. It's not a skeptical doubt where you shut down, but nevertheless, I gained some faith and confidence just hanging out with him. And at the end of my time with him, we were saying our goodbyes. Unexpectedly, he looked at me very intently, and he may have said this to everyone who he said goodbye to, but it was especially meaningful to me. He looked at me and he said, "May you truly be happy." That's a very nice thing to say, "May you truly be happy," and could tell that he meant it. But the way that it hit me in the heart was that it opened up a measure of insecurity, a feeling of, well, maybe I'm not truly happy. And it actually brought to light a view that I had of myself, that I was a happy person. I thought I was already happy. But he said, "May you truly be happy," and it struck me in a way that says, well, maybe I'm not. And it opened up a cavity of insecurity and doubt about who I thought I was, which is a good thing. But that led me to also reflect on and wonder about, what does it mean to be happy anyway? This language of happiness is spread far and wide. It's all about even the Dalai Lama says the purpose of life is to be happy. And the second half of that is, and to be free of suffering. Purpose of life is to free yourself from suffering and to be happy. But that became a seed question of what it means to be happy. And so naturally, it led me to study what the Buddha actually said about happy. And it became the hub around which I taught for many, many years. I think the number one most repeated discourse that I offered over the last 35 years has been and day-longs and articles on the Buddha's way to happiness. And I thought that I would just distill it a little bit for you tonight. I'm not going to say much more about Munindra, but I would recommend that you read the book that Mirka Nastor wrote about him, Stories and Teachings of Munindra, called Living This Life Fully. It's a fun book to read. And it has his teachings, and it's mixed. His teachings are mixed with actual passages from the Buddha's suttas, and just his own rendition on certain sutras, and practice stories, people talking. I think there's some stories that I told her when she interviewed me in that book. But I would like to say a few things about the Buddha's way to happiness. So clearly there's an association with happiness that has to do with liberation. The Buddha was called Sukhiya, the happy one. So even though the first noble truth is there is suffering, there is stress, there is that in anyone's life who is born, any sentient being, even though that is the first noble truth. And so the teachings are built around ending this suffering. And the teachings are built around the understanding that the end of suffering is the highest happiness, is nirvana. But the Buddha deconstructed this word happiness. Basically, there are just countless sutras about happiness, but there's a couple different sutras, and I can't name them, but in one particular sutra, the Buddha made a clear distinction between two kinds of happiness. Happiness that is conditional, is caused, and happiness that is uncaused or unconditioned. So the conditioned happiness is called Lokiya Sukha, worldly, conventional, conditional. Sukha is happiness. Lokiya is the happiness of the world, or worldly, or conventional. And that kind of happiness is the happiness that depends on conditions being a certain way. It's conditional. When those conditions are present, you feel happy. When they're absent, you don't feel happy. So that kind of happiness, that conditional happiness, which is really the main kind of happiness that our world promotes, glorifies, and puts its faith in. And the Buddha called the faith that one puts in conditional happiness is misplaced. Because that kind of happiness that is unreliable, dependent on conditions, is actually a form of suffering. So that kind of happiness is subsumed under the first noble truth, a kind of the suffering of changing conditions, suffering of unreliable changing conditions, unsatisfactory. It can't give you lasting satisfaction. It can only give you temporary hits. So that was the conditional happiness. And that's the kind of happiness that the Buddha was born into. The happiness of being a sovereign, a son, a prince of a big landowner, kind of like a prince of the sovereign of the area. And so he had all manner of pleasures that he could experience, but they were fleeting and they didn't seem to scratch the itch that he had for true happiness, getting back to Munindraji's saying, may you truly be happy. Fortunately, the Buddha talked about another kind of happiness. There's Lokiya Sukha, and there's what he called Lokuttara Sukha. Lokuttara Sukha means beyond the world. Sukha, again, is happiness. Lokuttara is beyond the power and influence of conditions. Unconditional happiness, a happiness that doesn't depend on getting what you want. It doesn't depend on satisfying any kind of hunger. It's the happiness of being free of hunger. And in the teachings, the encouragement is that one gives rise internally to the intention to experience, to discover, to recover, you could say, the unconditional happiness, to aim for the highest happiness, the happiness that is beyond the power and influence of any conditions, inner conditions or outer conditions, is unassailable, free. The encouragement is that you aim for that. And it's understood that if you aim for that unconditional happiness, all the other kinds of conventional happiness, all the kinds of ways that one can experience pleasure in this world, and even the temporary, all those kinds of pleasures still come even more intensely in the wake of that intention for the highest happiness. But you no longer suffer with the misplaced faith that those changing experiences will bring you lasting happiness. You no longer believe that the nearest and dearest of your life will give you lasting happiness. The best vacation that you've ever had will give you lasting happiness. The thing that you think you have to be happy will give you lasting happiness. You know better. And so you're able to experience the pleasures of the world, but not cling to them. That's why the fragrance of freedom and liberation, it's why it's sometimes described as liberation through non-clinging. It doesn't mean liberation through not having any experiences of pleasure. It just means not clinging to them. And not having one's life revolving around seeking after experiences that go away. The words of Suzuki Roshi, where he said, renunciation is not giving up the things of this world, but in understanding deeply that they go away. Here's David's impermanence teaching. So this is actually a good time to read from the middle-length sutras of the Buddha, otherwise known as the Majjhima Nikaya, a very succinct, I guess you could call it a brief sutra, even though it has several lines, but some of the sutras are really long and repetitive. This one is straight and to the point. And see if, even though we're in the middle of our daily lives and we're in the middle of this world that seems to be on fire, still, if that aspiration is, it's still encouraged that that aspiration for liberation takes root in your heart. Because if a liberated heart is really the greatest blessing and benefit to this world and the people who you are around. So this is from the Majjhima Nikaya, and it's a little magical. It says, then Sakka, who is king of the gods, was with the Buddha, having stood to one side, asked the Blessed One, the Buddha, briefly, Venerable Sir, how does a monk become liberated by the destruction of craving, attain the ultimate aim, the ultimate peace from bondage, the ultimate holy life, the ultimate goal, and so be the best among gods and humans? the Buddha, king of gods here and now, a monk has to come to learn. So we have to come and open ourselves. All things are not worth clinging to. This is what they need to learn. All things are not worth clinging to. King of gods, when a monk has come to learn all things are not worth clinging to, he directly knows each thing. Whatever sensation he experiences, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, he dwells seeing impermanence in those sensations. He dwells seeing fading away. He dwells seeing cessation. He dwells seeing relinquishment, letting go. As he dwells seeing impermanence in those sensations, as he dwells seeing fading away, as he dwells seeing cessation, fading away, as he dwells seeing relinquishment, he does not cling to anything whatsoever in the world. Not clinging, he is not agitated. Not being agitated, he individually attains nibbana. That's liberation. He comes to know this: birth is destroyed, the holy life is fulfilled, what had to be done is done, this state of being is no more. Briefly, King of gods, that is how a monk becomes liberated by the destruction of craving, attains the ultimate aim, the ultimate peace from bondage, the ultimate holy life, the ultimate goal, and so is best among gods and humans. So impermanence is at the heart of what allows us to experience that happiness, true happiness, that happiness that is free of hunger, that happiness that is independent of circumstances, the happiness of the unconditioned, the unborn, otherwise known as nibbana. So that's the crux, is the divide. Oh boy, I've really gone over time. I'm so sorry. Just give me a few more minutes. So the dividing, that two between conditional and unconditional happiness. But there's another list that I think is very useful for one to carry, that gets repeated over and over in the teaching. It's a little bit more accessible, less about the liberation. It's more about our lives, more practical. It says there's 4 kinds of worldly happiness: the happiness of having resources, the happiness of enjoying them, the happiness of being debt-free. Important. And then the 4th one is the happiness of blamelessness, of not causing harm. And of those 4, the happiness of blamelessness is considered 16 times more valuable than the first 3. But in any case, we want to aim our lives for the highest happiness, but in the meantime, find the most optimum conditions for worldly happiness too. And for that, it's to be blameless, to act in ways that are non-harming, to be as free of debt as possible, and to enjoy our lives, even when the world is burning. Otherwise, we empower the demons. We have to enjoy our lives. So thank you for listening. Hope you all connect with Munindraji somewhere along the line, and Keith, if you want to just give a couple minutes, and then let me just do a little bit of a reminder, though. I'm leading a retreat in the Phoenix area this weekend. If you didn't know about it and you want to come, please contact Insight Meditation Scottsdale. I think there's some information on our website. Also, there's a community-wide picnic on the 21st of June for the Bay Area people. Please come. And then I'll be doing an in-person half-day retreat on the 28th in San Francisco at the San Francisco Dharma Collective. And so I'll leave the rest to you, Keith, if there's anything to say.
Just very briefly, the Dharma has been offered freely for over 2,500 years. It is what sustains the teaching, sustains the teachers, sustains the Sangha, is our generosity in whatever way we want to express that. One of the ways you can express that is financially. There are some links that I put in the chat, as well as in the email. And anything that you can give from your heart is very much welcomed. So thank you.
Thank you. Please feel free to thank you for co-hosting. That's an act of dana too, and the newsletter that Mary puts out every week, that's an act of dana. There's many ways. Noemi, being a board member forever, act of dana. There's all kinds of dana being offered. Dan, who's here with us, also a board member, and others. So lots of ways to offer dana. So thank you, and thanks for your past dana, and thanks in advance for tonight. Please unmute and say good night.
Thank you, Howie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Howie.
May you all be
Bye.
truly happy.
Everyone.
Thank you, Howie.
Thank you, Howie. Good night,
Thank you.
May you all.
Good night, everyone.
be happy.
Good night.
Sweet dreams, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks.
Thank you, Keith.